Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. I wanted to bring to your attention something that jumped out at me as I was reviewing the motions to suppress. These are the very crucial motions to suppress evidence that the defense filed back on November 14th, 2024 that you can review on the public docket. Reference the times that warrants were signed regarding Mr. Kohberger back in Latah County, where the crimes occurred, of course, in Moscow, versus in Monroe County, where he was physically on the 29th of December 2022, and where he was arrested the following day, Monroe County, Pennsylvania. There is a 3-hour time difference according to these documents that were filed by the defense. I'd like you to take a look at the motion to suppress a memorandum in support regarding Pennsylvania search warrant for Mr. Kohberger's person. And it says here in paragraph 2, on December 28th, 2022, Trooper Leary of Pennsylvania State Police became aware of the objective of arresting Mr. Kohberger via Moscow Police Corporal Payne. The next paragraph, on December 29th, 2022 at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:45 Pacific in parentheses, a magistrate in Pennsylvania issued a search warrant for Mr. Kohberger's person. Next paragraph, on December 29th, 2022 at 2:22 p.m. Pacific Time, noting here that there is no corresponding time in parentheses as to what the time would be on the East Coast, Monroe County. But it says here again, December 29th, 2022 at 2:22 p.m. Pacific Time, the magistrate in this matter signed an arrest warrant for Mr. Kohberger in Latah County. So it appears here that if this statement in paragraph 3 is true, that same 3-hour time difference would be true in the next paragraph. On December 29th, 2022 at 2:22 p.m. Pacific Time, the magistrate in this matter signed an arrest warrant for Mr. Kohberger in Latah County. That, of course, is Magistrate Judge Megan E. Marshall. 2:22 Pacific Time would have been for 5:22 Monroe County time. So it appears that the warrant, if this is correct, was signed in Pennsylvania before it was signed in Idaho. But the only reason why a warrant was issued for Mr. Kohberger was because of the crimes that had occurred in Idaho, not for anything that he did in Pennsylvania. He was arrested, as this documentation states, after Moscow Police Department began communicating with the local authorities in Pennsylvania because they just couldn't go out and arrest Mr. Kohberger. This was another jurisdiction. It was a sovereign jurisdiction with their own laws and boundaries. He needed to communicate with the local authorities. So Mr. Kohberger was not arrested the early morning hours of December 30th, 2022 for anything he did wrong in Pennsylvania. It was because of what was going on back in Idaho, but the arrest warrant seems, at least according to what the defense counsel is saying here, if this is correct, was signed in Pennsylvania before it was signed in Idaho. And we can confirm these times to be true because here you see the warrant signed by Megan E. Marshall, warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest, citing to the 5 felonies that he is being charged with at all times. Of course, as we continue to state, he is presumed innocent under the eyes of the law until or unless he either is adjudicated guilty or pleads guilty to these crimes. But Megan E. Marshall signature is 12/29/22, that's December 29th, 2022 at 2:22 p.m. Given the 3-hour time difference, this would be 5:22 p.m. in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. But if we look at the warrant, just as the defense counsel is saying, signed in Pennsylvania by the judicial officer Margarita Patty Worthington, that warrant was issued on December 29th, 2022 at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Time, because that's where Pennsylvania is, on the East Coast. So the time at that moment that this warrant was signed, if this time is correct, would have been 1:35 p.m. in Latah County, or more than a half hour earlier. Then the arrest warrant was signed by Judge Marshall, which was at 5:22 p.m. Take a look at these documents. You can pull up several of the records dealing with the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Brian C. Kohberger. If you go to this link, that's where this warrant is located. And you know, of course, by now that the link for Mr. Kohberger's documentation relative to state of Idaho versus Brian C. Kohberger is available to you by going to the online website for the Idaho Courts of Judicial Interest and scrolling down to the Kohberger case. You can pull up Judge Marshall's warrant there. Take a look at the documents. Let me know what you think. This will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone. Thank you as always for joining us here today.